250 million people in Africa do not have enough food to eat each day. Close to 1 billion people in Africa cannot afford nutritious food. This as countries continue to grapple with the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and also the ever-increasing consequences of climate change. With this in mind, more than 50 African countries came together recently at their 32nd session of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations Regional Conference for Africa in Malabo in Equatorial Guinea. To tell us a little bit more about the outcomes and the critical issues for Africa, I spoke to the United Nations FAO Regional Representative for Africa, Dr. Abebe Haile-Gabriel. All right, you recently held a gathering, a regional conference for Africa for the FAO. What would you say the conference was about in large part?
It's a regional conference for Africa, as you rightly said. It's an FAO conference. As you know, FAO is an intergovernmental organization, and every 2 years it hosts regional conferences. And it is the highest governing body in terms of guiding FAO's work on the African continent. It's a biennial event bringing together ministers in charge of agriculture and food, but also of environment, natural resources, land, and other relevant sectors. And the conference reviews the performance on delivery of programs over the previous 2 years and discusses priorities and provide guidance for the next 2 years.
What would you say were the major outcomes of this most recent gathering?
Peter, the conference took place at a time, as you know, when African countries, most of them are confronted with significant overlapping challenges in the areas of food and agriculture. We can name COVID-19, droughts, conflicts all over the place, economic downturns, plant pests like the desert locust, and so on, which also dictated the agenda of the conference. So some of the agenda items include, for example, the priorities for the Africa region for the next 2 years in the areas of food and agriculture, the recovery options and policies from the impacts of COVID-19 and other natural and human-made shocks, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area opportunities to boost intra-Africa trade in agricultural products and services, opportunities for investing in ecosystem restoration, how to ensure women, youth, and the poor are factored in the agenda of agri-food systems transformation, among the others. So some of the major outcomes from the conference included, first, endorsement of the regional priorities. 4 regional priorities have been endorsed for the Africa region going forward. These include sustainable production systems, efficient and equitable nutrition systems, climate action and sustainable management of natural resources, and building resilience towards ending poverty. FAO also has developed a new strategic framework that will guide its work for the next 10 years, from 2022 to 2031. And this strategic framework, which has been adopted already by its members last June, needed to be localized in a way to support countries better results along 4 areas: better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life, leaving no one behind. So the conference led to strong buy-ins among members of FAO's strategic framework and the 4 betters I just outlined, and the commitment to implement them locally. In addition, FAO is also developing 2 important strategies, first on science and innovation, and another on climate change. And all these have been tabled for deliberation and further guidance at the conference. And with the African Union, FAO also launched during the conference investment guidelines for use in agribusiness and agri-food systems. So it has achieved quite a lot.
All right. So how do you think it would transform policy, though, particularly in countries across the continent? You're doing all of this work, coming up with these ideas. Agri-food systems across Africa, how would policy change as a result of some of these initiatives?
The priorities from the priorities I just outlined form the basis for collaboration between FAO and the member countries in the next 2 years, and also for rallying partnerships around them. As you know, in countries, there is what we call UN country teams led by UN resident coordinators, and they champion the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals through a framework that is led and owned by countries. It's called the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. FAO is a big player within this. Naturally, the agenda of agriculture and food is very important in most, if not all, African countries. And all these recommendations and outcomes will feed into the policy processes going forward. For example, as I have mentioned about these 4 betters, there will be focus on delivering on the 4 betters, also linking it with promotion of trade and investment in agri-food systems in the countries. But at the end of the day, it is the countries themselves who will decide, who will determine what needs to be done and how much should be invested. FAO and other partners accompany this process.
Are you convinced that these countries will do the investment? Many, many years ago in Mozambique, a declaration was made that a certain percentage of each country's budget will be dedicated towards agriculture. And sadly, by and large, this hasn't happened. What do you think needs to happen to shift this commitment?
You're absolutely right that back in 2003, actually, when the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program, which is CAADP, was adopted in Maputo, in Mozambique, that they have agreed to allocate at least 10% of their national budget to agriculture. And 10 years after that, there was a Malabo summit in Equatorial Guinea that led to adoption of a declaration. It's called Malabo Declaration, which was also emphasizing on the need to, for countries to lead the way. It's one thing to say agriculture and food is a priority in the policy and investment, and it's quite another to allocate the needed resources. And governments have been struggling really to meet that commitment. The data, the information that is coming out, as you know, the African Union also undertakes a biennial review on the performance of the Malabo Declaration, and the information coming out in the very latest report just came earlier this year. It's not very encouraging. So what can be done? There is no other way unless we make investment, quality investment to boost productivity, improve food systems. We're not going to get out of the cycle. So yes, you are right. Not enough has not been done. We need to push for more. We need to really encourage governments to promote not only public sector investment, but also attract private sector investment. That is one of the misunderstandings. Whenever investment is referred to in relation to government, everybody thinks that it's the public sector that will be, even the 10% is not going to be enough. So it is really to promote private sector investment, and the farmers themselves are private sector operators. So it is about really mobilizing investment among all the stakeholders.
I'll carry on with this idea. I mean, agriculture makes up, nearly 20% of sub-Saharan Africa's economies and home to around 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land. How do we scale up to fulfill the continent's agricultural potential and contribute to poverty reduction and food security?
Yeah, again, you're absolutely right. Agriculture has a huge potential, in Africa. However, this potential remains untapped. Agriculture and food systems should be accorded primacy in public policy and in investment. There is no other way. And for this, political will and leadership commitment is key. Not phony commitment. I mean, real commitment. It's not enough to say that agriculture is a priority and put it in your policy statements and so on. You need to demonstrate it through real actions and investments. And there should be some kind of accountability for that, mutual accountability for that. So current levels of productivity are very, very low in Africa. Average productivity, for example, if you look at the crop sector, it stands about 30% of the developing country average. I didn't say developed country average. I didn't say world average. I said developing country average, 30% of the developing country average, which is very, very low. And with this, there is no way that African agriculture can be competitive, let alone globally, even in local markets. And for example, it may either make or break the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. You have the framework, you have the agreements, unless you strengthen the productive capacity of agriculture and food system. And as we know, Africa is a net importer of food, worth tens of billions of US dollars annually. There is no way AFCFTA is going to be successful unless we transform the agri-food systems. And it requires enhanced investment, both public and private, including in research and development, which is underfunded at the moment. So countries need to improve their policies and mobilize investment to boost productivity.
You mentioned political will. Is it just political will, or do some of these countries actually have no idea what to do?
Frankly, I don't believe that lack of knowledge can explain the underperformance in Africa. There is enough information, enough knowledge. There are opportunities for experience sharing and lessons learning. And this is one of the things which FAO is doing, using its extensive networks and expertise, body of expertise. One of the, I must mention that one of the things we have done during this conference was facilitate experience sharing and lessons learning based on best practices from the member countries themselves. We didn't invite anyone from Europe or America or Asia. We identified countries within Africa who are doing good in certain areas and provided the platform to share with the rest. So it's not lack of knowledge. Even if it's not complete, it's not 100% perfect. There are, of course, gaps. There are gaps, but that gaps can be easily filled. The key is the political will to change, the leadership commitment to make things happen. It is actions that is lacking. It's not lack of knowledge.
Perhaps finally, West Africa has recently agreed to a regional initiative to fight climate change, a huge factor for agriculture. Do you think that there's enough being done on an Africa-wide initiative to protect agriculture from climate change?
Enough being done? You must be kidding, Peter. There is almost nothing, I would repeat, there is almost nothing that is being done enough and adequate in the Africa's context. Far from it. I could dare say we have not even scratched the surface. As a result, the food and agriculture sectors continue to suffer from climate-related risks. Name it, droughts. A failure of one rainy season would translate into devastation of lives and livelihoods. I can give you examples from Eastern Africa at the moment as we speak. And it applies the whole of the Sahel and West Africa. Of course, the flip side of the equation suggests that a lot can be done. You know, when you haven't done enough, it means you can do more and achieve better. So, no, not at all.
All right, so I guess the word there then really is that our politicians can and must do better and do it urgently. Dr. Abebe Haile-Gabriel, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.